So, hello friends, welcome to Amit Sinha IAS Academy, an online initiative that we have undertaken under this impact of lockdown, as you all are well aware of. So, as I discussed in my earlier videos, that we are discussing currently the aspects of modern India, and that is primarily based upon the content of the NCERT of class 12th written by Bipan Chandra. So I told you earlier also that you need to go through this particular textbook. That is one of the most compulsory readings as far as civil service examination is concerned. So there itself I was discussing with all of you in my earlier lectures about the different chapters of the NCERT textbooks. And today I'm going to discuss with all of you about the socio-religious reform movement. So if you see my videos, I've already discussed about the 1857 revolt. And now obviously after that, the most important chapter for all of you from your both prelims and the main examination point of view is the socio-religious reform movement. Now as far as socio-religious reform movement is concerned, as I told you also in my I would say the earlier video, that this particular chapter needs to be prepared in fact by clubbing 3 chapters of NCERT. Now if you see the chapter number 4, the chapter number 5 and chapter number of course 10, now these 3 chapters actually carry the content of the socio-religious reform movements in India, which is also known as the so-called Indian awakening or Renaissance, or in India, or Indian Renaissance in that way. So let us just try to see that what all things are given in these 3 chapters and how it is going to be relevant for all of you. Now to understand the socio-religious reform movements of the 19th century, which is also considered as a part of Indian Renaissance, as an outbreak of modern and rational thinking in India. Now the background of that was already given in the chapter number 4. As I told you, chapter number 4, there are 2 aspects. One was the British administration and second one was the cultural policies, the socio-cultural policy of the Britishers. Obviously, in my earlier video, I had already discussed about the British administration, but today I'm going to discuss with all of you about the socio-cultural policy of the Britishers and how actually it paved the way. It actually paved the way for the outbreak of socio-religious reform movements in India in the 19th century. Fine. So these 2 aspects we are going to link together. So let us now examine these 2 aspects together. And I told you that we are in this particular lecture, in this particular video, we are going to summarize the 3 chapters of NCERT. Chapter number 4, 5 and 10. I think it is clear to all of you. Now let me give you a brief idea about how the background of that particular aspect has been clearly mentioned in your NCERT regarding the socio-religious reform movement. Now, if you can see on your board, I've already mentioned about the socio-religious reform movements. Fine. So to understand that, we have to first and foremost understand about the background of that. Now see the background of that very nicely written in the NCERT. That is, of course, the background that can be traced between the 1757 to obviously 1857. Now in this particular period, that is 1757 to 1857, that's 100 years period. In this period, the background of the socio-religious reform movements for India was laid down. Alright, now let me explain what actually was the explanation that is given there in socio-religious reform movement. See, we are discussing about the background. Alright, so as far as the background of this reform movement is concerned, what we have to understand, the background was laid down in 1757 after the Britishers actually captured India. So Britishers or the British East India Company, they actually had been following a policy of no interference. No interference in the socio-cultural aspects of India, because their government was only to appropriate the resources from India. They had hardly to do anything as far as the reforming the Indian cultural society was concerned. So therefore, they had no concern about the socio-cultural reforms in India. Their concern was primarily only on economic aspect. Therefore, they were having no interference. Now, even though even though in this period it is 1757 to 1813. But this two period is a very important period. Now between these two period, they were following a policy of no interference, yet they were remarkably able to actually prohibit the practice of female infanticide in India. So in 1795, the Britishers for the first time in Bengal, they enacted a law to prohibit the female infanticide in India at that point of time. Now to enforce that, in 1802, the two people, Lord William Bentinck and Lord Hardinge, now they were very instrumental in executing the policy of stopping the female infanticide. That was one of the most brutal crimes that was basically being done at that point of time in India as well. So this is one remarkable, you can say, reforms that we can see in the context of this particular period, when they were following a deliberate policy of no interference in the India's socio-cultural aspects. Fine. Now say after 1813, now this is a very remarkable period. After 1813 to 1857, now in this period, between 1813 to 1857, the Britishers followed a policy of weak and hesitant modernization in India. They followed a weak and hesitant modernization policy in India, under which they wanted to transform Indian society and culture. Obviously, they wanted to transform Indian society and culture because of various factors, but the most important factor for them was again economic interest. Alright, so therefore I have written very clearly, they have had a clear-cut economic interest. That was the first reason that why they followed this policy. Second, development in the field of science and technology. And the third, also the emergence of the era of new thinking at that point of time. So what we have to understand, in this period, the Britishers were forced to adopt some policy of modernization for India because of both the pressure that was being faced by the company in England, and also some of the modern thinkers of India, the enlightened thinkers of India like Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Now obviously they were instrumental in convincing and pushing the Britishers to actually bring certain reforms in India in the field of socio-cultural aspects. Fine. So that's what actually was the issue. So economic interest was a prominent interest behind bringing the transformation in society and culture. How? Obviously they wanted to ensure a peaceful law and order in India. They wanted to actually make the territory peaceful so that they can easily be able to exploit the resources from India, and most importantly they were able to also sell their products very easily in India. So these all things were basically behind that. Science and technology development also helped them in terms of discovering new technologies, discovering new ideas, new inventions, and because of that also they were able to bring or introduce some of the other form of reforms in India. New thinking was very important because it actually led to the emergence of new attitude among the company officials in India. Alright, and it is all because of various factors, internal, that is in India, and external also. Now see, externally in Europe, already the French Revolution had undertaken, and because of that only the philosophy of liberty, equality and fraternity had become a prominent agenda of the global reforms of every country at that point of time. Fine. And similarly there were various scholars, various philosophers like Rousseau, Kant, Voltaire. Now these philosophers, their ideas were also becoming very much popular across the globe at that point of time. So because of these factors only the new thinking started coming into place, and therefore what you see in the new thinking, three type of thinkings emerged: rationalism, humanism and positivism. So rationalism, humanism and positivism. Now these three type of thinkings got emerged across the world. Alright. In rationalism, obviously the reasons, the logic, Now they were given more and more prominence while executing any policy or really any action in India or across the world also. Alright. Similarly, humanism. Now humanism simply indicates love towards humanity or humans. So obviously love towards humanity and human also become a prominent ideology at that point of time. And on the other hand, positivism. Now positivism simply indicates that a human being is always capable to innovate, to discover, to bring modernity in their life. So capability of human being was given due recognition also under this positivism as an ideology. So out of these three ideologies, of course, humanism became very much popular, because from humanism only, philosophies like individualism, liberalism and socialism, they all emerged across the globe. So what we say, the ideological background like individualism, which prefers giving importance to every individual. Liberalism, which prefers giving importance to every individual in the context of their right of the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of doing anything. So of course liberalism also become a very prominent ideology, which actually also got derived from humanism. And the third one was obviously socialism. Now obviously in socialism we all understand the particular aspect that the society becomes the most formidable aspect of any policy in any part of the world. So under socialism we all know about it, that it is something where the distribution of production has to be shared among the social or community in a society only. That's what actually is the ideology of socialism. So of course these three ideologies became very much prominent across the globe before you can see the emergence of socio-religious reform movements in India. ठीक है, तो आप देख सकते हैं कि आइडियोलॉजिकल बैकग्राउंड पहले से क्रिएट हो चुका था या हो रहा था, जिसके बाद इंडिया में उसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ना बहुत ही लाजमी था, बहुत ही लॉजिकल था। और इम्पैक्ट तब पड़ा जब इंडिया में मिडिल क्लास जो हम सब लोग हैं, मिडिल क्लास, इंटेलिजेंसिया क्लास, इनका इमर्जेंस हुआ, वो इन आइडियाज को ग्रैब कर पाए। इसके बारे में हम आगे भी चर्चा करेंगे। लेकिन समझना यहाँ ये है कि ये तीन सारे आइडियोलॉजीज उस समय प्रेवेलेंट थे, लेकिन ब्रिटिशर्स का जो आउटलुक था वो तीन तरह के आउटलुक से इन्फ्लुएंस थे। एक कंजर्वेटिविज्म, सो दे वर कंजर्वेटिव, majority of Britishers were belonging to this particular group which was known as conservatism or conservative group. Second one was imperialistic and third one was radicals. So Britishers outlook can also be classified into three categories. One is conservatism, imperialism or imperialistic, or third is radicals. Now the conservatism or conservative believers, they used to understand that the culture of India and culture of Europe, they are different. They are different. What is being practiced in Europe and what is being practiced in India, they are different. But Indian culture cannot be seen as inferior, or the culture of, let's say, the Oriental world, that is Asia or Eastern part, cannot be seen as inferior one. So जो ऑक्सीडेंटल और ओरिएंटलिज्म के बीच में जो डिबेट है, ऑफ कोर्स दे यूज्ड टू कंसीडर कि वो इंफीरियर नहीं है, डिफरेंट है लेकिन इंफीरियर नहीं है। लेकिन imperialistic believers in the British, you can say, ideological group or think tank, now they used to consider the Indian culture is inferior, it is barbaric, uncivilized, decadent, and therefore they have all the rights to rule over India. So that's what actually was the imperialistic philosophy. And you know about Rudyard Kipling. So Rudyard Kipling philosophy of course that Britishers were on civilizing mission in India in terms of controlling or of course subjugating the Indian territories by the company. So this is how they have justified their imperialistic designs in India. Okay. Third one was radicals. Now see, radicals, they used to carry an element of rational thought. So the best of the rational thought of the Western world, in other words, westernization. So the best of the rational thought of Western world should be practiced in India. They used to believe that it should be practiced in India in a paternalistic ideology or paternalistic authority. In other words, they wanted to have an authoritarian government in India. क्या चाहते थे radicals? वो कहते थे कि जो रैशनल थिंकिंग्स है वेस्ट का उसको इंडिया में लाने की जरूरत है, और उसको लाने का जो तरीका है वो इस बात को जस्टिफाई करते थे कि यहाँ पे हमें एक ऑथोरिटेरियन गवर्नमेंट चाहिए. मतलब इंडिया में रिफॉर्म्स के लिए ऑथोरिटेरियन गवर्नमेंट चाहिए, तभी यहाँ रिफॉर्म्स पॉसिबल है. ठीक है. ऑन द अदर हैंड, these people who belong to radical group in the British think tank, they used to always advocate for democracy in Britain. तो ब्रिटेन में इनको डेमोक्रेसी चाहिए था और इंडिया में इनको ऑथोरिटेरियन गवर्नमेंट चाहिए था. This what actually was the belief of radicals. So radicals wanted to actually promote westernization in India. They wanted to promote westernization of India, and therefore, because of this particular ideology also, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, this is very important information for all of you, Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a supporter of radical think tank of the Britishers. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a supporter of radical think tank of Britishers. However, the Britishers were wanting to convert India into a Christian land. Therefore, the Christian missionaries, they were let loose in India, in different remote parts of India, to promote Christianity, and they were under this belief that there would be a certain point of time they will be able to convert the local Indians into Christianity, and therefore they started promoting schools, colleges, hospitals, etc. in India just to ensure the conversion of the people into Christianity. Fine. So this is how the reforms were actually introduced in India in this particular phase. Alright, and now you can see the example of these reforms very clearly. So what we have to understand, between 1813 to 1857, the reforms undertaken by the Britishers in India, they were primarily guided by the policy of weak and hesitant modernization. ठीक है, ये वीक और हेजिटेंट मॉडर्नाइजेशन से गाइडेड थे. ये क्लियर नहीं था अभी भी कि इनको मॉडर्नाइजेशन करना है इंडिया का, इनको वेस्टर्नाइजेशन करना था इंडिया का, ना कि मॉडर्नाइजेशन करना था इंडिया का. ठीक है. सो ये इनका काम था. मतलब डिफरेंस यही है वेस्टर्नाइजेशन मॉडर्नाइजेशन में कि वेस्टर्नाइजेशन में यू डोंट हैव टू अप्लाई योर माइंड, योर रीजन, योर लॉजिक. whatever is being practiced in western world, you have to only ape that. मतलब आपको उसको सिर्फ नकल करना है. ठीक है. मॉडर्नाइजेशन में क्या है कि you have to apply your logic and reasons. So rationality is always preferred in modernization. Alright. So obviously they wanted to have a weak and hesitant modernization, even though the Indians, some of the Indians were able to push forward this particular aspect of modernization in India. Fine. And that's what actually when NCERT mentions clearly the two major reforms. One was, of course, the humanitarian measures taken by the Britishers due to the support of Indians, or rather the pushing forward by the Indians. For example, in 1829, of course, sati was abolished. So practice of sati, one of the social evils of India, was abolished by Bentinck, the Lord Bentinck, with the support of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy was able to push forward the issue of sati, and finally it was abolished. Alright. Then similarly, slavery was also abolished. So in 1843, the Governor General was Lord Ellenborough. So Ellenborough was also there to abolish slavery in India. Finally, 1856, Widow Remarriage Act. Now, Widow Remarriage Act was enacted in 1856 due to the consistent or continuous demand for the same by an Indian, Iswar Chandra Vidya Sagar. So because of Iswar Chandra Vidya Sagar, Widow Remarriage Act was also enacted in 1856, of course under the regime of Lord Canning, proposed by Dalhousie, but finally it was enacted under Lord Canning. So this is how Widow Remarriage Act was also enacted. This was one set of reforms which was introduced in India in this particular point of time. On the other hand, between this particular period of time, of course, even in education some reforms were introduced. All right. For example, like in 1781, you can see here, in 1781, Warren Hastings set up what? Calcutta Madrasa to promote the education among Muslims. All right. So Calcutta Madrasa was established by Warren Hastings in 1781. Then in 1791, Jonathan Duncan, जो डंकन चाय पत्ती का नाम सुना होगा, याद रखिएगा ऐसे. सो डंकन चाय सुना होगा आपने. जोनाथन डंकन. So Jonathan Duncan in 1791 was able to establish or set up a Sanskrit college in Varanasi. So in Varanasi, Sanskrit college was established by Jonathan Duncan. Similarly, in 1813, the Charter Act of 1813 that we have already discussed. In 1813 Charter Act, the company was asked to spend rupees 1 lakh. 1 लाख रुपया कंपनी को कहा गया कि आप खर्च करेंगे भारत में एजुकेशन को बढ़ावा देने के लिए. So in 1813 Charter Act, rupees 1 lakh of money was to be spent in India to encourage education. लेकिन 1823 तक, मतलब एक दशक लग गया. 1823 तक 13 में ये पास हुआ, लेकिन 23 तक कोई खर्च नहीं हुआ पैसा. Which is only in 1823 rupees 1 lakh was for the first time spent for the education of India. Fine. And then in 1835 the famous Macaulay's Minute. So in 1835 the teaching of Western sciences, literature through English, or in other words the English education, was to be promoted in India under the Macaulay's Minute. So under Macaulay's Minute, English education was given over emphasis. All right. And this particular aspect is understood to be in the context of that since Oriental learning, मतलब इंडिया का जो लर्निंग है, जो विद्या देने की पद्धति है, वो इंफीरियर है यूरोप से. वो यूरोप से इंफीरियर है, इसीलिए हमें इनको इंग्लिश एजुकेशन प्रोवाइड करना है. वेस्टर्न साइंस जो पढ़ाना है वो इंग्लिश एजुकेशन के रूप में पढ़ाना है. ठीक है. नाउ राजा राम मोहन रॉय वाज आल्सो देयर टू एडवोकेट